Hi guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of Conqueror's Blade. We're going to be having a little bit of a different type of video from the usual sort of unit review stuff today, as I kind of want to take a bit of a look at Conqueror's Blade as a whole, kind of where we've been, where we are now, and kind of how do we see, or how do I see the game going forwards into the future. Because it's been around about 6 months now, or approximately getting close to 6 months, 5 or 6 months, since the game first hit open beta. And quite a lot has changed, I think, from open beta release to kind of where we are now. And I would expect quite a lot of change probably going forwards as well. So yeah, I think that was kind of important to touch on because it's a question that I see relatively regularly in the comments is, you know, is it worth starting the game now? Is this a game I should be getting into? Or is the game dead? Or is the game dying? And I just want to touch on some of the good things and some of the bad things about the game in its current state and kind of some of the problems we face and some of the problems that have perhaps been a bit better addressed more recently. So first things first, I just want to hop out and go to the development roadmap. So this was published middle of November, 19th of November, and it's kind of outlined a few of the things we've got coming up, because this is kind of highlighting what's going to be for the remainder of 2019. So obviously, most of you will be aware if you've been playing for a while now, that obviously Season 1 has recently finished, and I think it could quite easily be said that Season 1 didn't go off without any hitches, because it certainly had its fair share of problems. I think kind of from the off, they massively overdid the grind, and there wasn't enough ways for people to easily earn glory, and it kind of made it so it became basically impossible to complete the Season 1. And they made changes to that kind of throughout. They added in new ways of earning glory, but kind of, you know, half the season had already gone by the time this was implemented, and kind of there could have been a little bit smoother in kind of how it was implemented at certain times. So I know that was sort of didn't go off really without a hitch. But in principle, I think the idea of running the seasons was pretty good. I think the at least initial price of 1,000 sovereigns was pretty reasonable. The fact they then had to add in a 1,000 sovereign secondary upgrade, I think didn't go down so well, understandably. And I think they should have sorted the grind out better rather than just introducing a pay to advance element to it. So they had some problems with Season 2. I'm hopeful that now, having learnt from Season 1, a lot of that will transfer over to Season 2 and it's going to be implemented a little bit better, because we're hoping to see that. Well, they've listed it in the, quarter 4 for this year. They've listed Season 2. Obviously, we are currently right in the middle here. We've very recently had the Rattan Resistance update released, and that's brought in the whole new Rattan army line, which I'm so far been very pleased with. It's added some nice units and some pretty interesting gameplay mechanics. I've done one video already on the Rattan, the Vipers. We'll probably have some more coming along sort of over the next couple of weeks, looking at hopefully the repeater crossbows and eventually the mounted crossbow cav as well. So yeah, we've got some interesting things coming up, and perhaps not unsurprisingly, they've mentioned that there are going to be plenty of winter events over the Christmas period. Good, I would expect there to be, and I'm pleased kind of they've announced that there is. So then following on from that, something that isn't included in the roadmap, and something that I'm really pleased they have implemented, but kind of came as a bit of surprise, is cross-server matchmaking. But just before we did actually dive into the cross-server matchmaking news article, I just wanted to touch a little on player numbers. Now, this is something it's very hard to talk too much about, because not everyone plays through Steam. Certainly a large number of people don't play through Steam. They play directly through the my.com launcher, as I do myself. So this is a very, very loosely representative number in terms of player numbers. And it's often talked about, is the game sort of increasing in numbers or is the game decreasing in numbers? Well, all in all, I think it seems to have about leveled out. If we took sort of the last couple of months, we sort of go down a bit, then we go up a bit, and then we're going down a bit. In all, there's not any great sweeping changes now. Pretty much not since, a month or two after release. Yes, at release, it did have a lot more players. That's kind of normal for most game cycles, that, immediately after entering open beta, numbers, drop off a bit. Because, obviously you get all the hype, you appear in all the PC gaming magazines and everyone knows about you, and everyone goes and tests it out, and it's obviously not going to be a game for everyone, so the numbers drop down and it finds its base level line. Some games continue to rapidly tail off to nothing, which is not what's happened with Conqueror's Blade, because we've seen sort of a pretty consistent schedule of player numbers kind of throughout the last couple of months. These obviously peaks representing territory war events, so Tuesdays and Saturdays, when understandably it gets a higher peak. And obviously there's many more thousands of players playing through the my.com launcher as well. But despite that, obviously, so all in all, I think pretty reasonable player numbers. No signs of it immediately dropping down to, nothing, no one there. So I think that's going to be fine, at least for the time being, at least well into 2020. I don't think we're going to be short on player numbers. However, having said that, obviously, when you then spread that over the 4 different servers, EU West 1, EU West 2, EU East, and then the North American server, and then you add in, obviously the fact it's a 24-hour period, and then you start to find that, if you're looking for a siege as maybe as a very low level player, so you don't want to be fighting higher tier players, or, you're looking at 3 in the morning at EU time, and suddenly finding battles can be quite difficult, because, yeah, understandably, there's not that many people on at those times, or a lot of the core players are now higher level, so that you can't really be easily matched against people of your skill level, and that's something that's really important. Because we want to be encouraging new players not only to come to the game, but to stick with the game. And if you go and take a new level 30 player who's got, I don't know, maybe level 5 pike militia or some domain spearmen or, some equally sort of very low tier unit and go and face them off against some Iron Reapers, understandably, while the Iron Reaper player may have a ball charging straight through that unit, the new player doesn't know what hits them, feels they can do absolutely nothing about it, and gets disgruntled with the game very quickly. And that's not a good thing, and I think that's one of the problems that has been putting off new players. So it was announced actually yesterday for me, this video will go out in a couple of days, so it'll be a while yet, that cross-server matchmaking has been enabled. We had no idea this was coming. I know very loosely they mentioned they were looking at it one time, but I didn't realise it was actually going to be coming out, so it was quite nice to see. And basically, this has joined, at least for matchmaking purposes, so not for territory wars purposes, EU West 1, EU West 2, North America and EU East together into one matchmaking zone. So just to clarify a little bit what I mean by that, so not the territory war map, so all this map for me is still EU West 1. It has no bearing between EU West 2 or EU East or anything like that. But if I go and queue for a siege battle, you'll see it's got this little global icon, and that means I'm queuing across all the servers, not just my own server. And that's had a few different effects, of which most are very positive. Now, firstly, it means if you're searching for a game at an obscure time in your time zone, if you're in the EU and searching in the middle of the night, you'll be playing with the North American people, so there's people to play with. But it also means that you can now queue, the matchmaking is capable of grouping the players much more by skill level. If you're a purple player, you are now, by and large, going to be facing off against blue and purple players. If you're a level 40 grey player, you will now be facing off against other grey players. And that's been reported quite a lot. A lot of people have noticed this, that the matchmaking is now matching players versus equivalent level players. And that is a massive step change, particularly more so for newer players. Obviously, for experienced players, I mean, I must admit, even myself, I do slightly miss being able to kill the odd low-level player, boost my own self-esteem. But in reality, the ability to sort of have a much more tier-for-tier, skill-based matchmaking is really important. And I feel the matchmaking is now working as it was intended, because it's got a much bigger pool of players to draw from. And so I think that's a really good thing. So I think this has changed a lot, and I think this is going to make a big difference going forwards in keeping and bringing more new players into the game. So, kind of in summary, that sums up, I think, a lot of the major changes kind of that have happened recently and that are going to affect the outlook going forwards. I think the game still has some other significant problems. I think balance is something that needs to be worked on a little more, unit and hero balance, and I would like to see a little bit more background information relating to that. So not only, so when we get a patch notes, when the patch comes out and we get the associated patch notes and they say, short sword had its damage reduced by 5%. I would like that to come with a bit of information that says, short swords have been having a 61% win rate across the last 50,000 battles, therefore we feel we needed to knock them back slightly. It'd be nice to see the logic behind some of the buffs and nerfs that get introduced, and not always just copied across from Frontier because Frontier has it, so therefore we have it. It would be nice to see a little bit more independent thinking in that and balancing according to our servers and kind of the needs of our servers. So I think I'd like to see a little bit more of that on the balancing front. I think we also need more maps, although today actually we have had a new map introduced today. I think they've had a Frontier camp map being sort of, well, I think it's actually technically reintroduced, but introduced effectively as a new siege map. So it's good to see new maps are coming. Would really like to see, you know, another map or two coming towards as we head towards the end of 2019, because new maps keep the game more interesting, particularly for the original core membership. So hopefully we can see the game sort of continuing to progress towards the end of 2019, and sort of as we head into 2020, whilst I think the game has got its fair share of problems, I don't think things look too bleak. And if kind of you joined this video wondering, is the game worth picking up at the moment? I think it is, particularly now with the matchmaking changes. Is the game worth continuing playing? Yes, I think it is. I think it has its problems, but I think a lot of them are slowly, admittedly, but are slowly starting to get addressed one step at a time. And I think the game is in a better place now than it was when it was released back into open beta, you know, back sort of mid 2019. So anyway, that's just kind of my assessment. As I said, that is really just my own opinion. It's just, you know, everyone sees things slightly differently. If you do see things slightly differently, do let me know what you think in the comments down below. Sorry this has been a bit of a dull, rambling video, but I've been thinking about making this something like this for quite a while, and with the matchmaking changes, I felt it was kind of a good time to touch on kind of some of the points around here and some of the changes that happened. So anyway, if it was interesting or you have some comment or criticism, let me know in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe to the channel because we'll have plenty more Conqueror's Blade content going forwards, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.